The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast belong solely to those expressing them and do not necessarily reflect the OSIP Foundation Incorporated or any other group or individual. This podcast may contain dialogue or subject material that could be considered for mature audiences only. All aspects of how you play the game and the OSIP Foundation Incorporated are protected by copyright and other state and federal intellectual property laws. Unauthorized use without the express written consent of the OSIP Foundation Incorporated is strictly prohibited. If you're interested in sponsoring How You Play the Game, please email us at podcast@osipfoundation.org. Your sponsorship may be tax deductible. Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of How You Play the Game, the official podcast of the OSIP Foundation Incorporated. Yours truly, Jack Berlin, with you as we talk to you about what's going on as far as the world of sportsmanship is concerned. Wow, I'm 0 for 3 today already. I had 1 cup of coffee, and I thought it'd be better, but I'm not. So let's just keep going, shall we? This is the second episode of the month of March. The year is 2026. As always, check us out online at osipfoundation.org. You can contact the show using the email address podcast@osipfoundation.org. Facebook.com/osipfoundation. Instagram and X are both at osipfoundation. # how you play the game. We got a couple of small things to talk about here. I got back from spring training a little while ago, and I wanted to comment on one thing that I saw and experienced while I was down in spring training that I've kind of been mulling over, or over which I've been mulling, if you want to not end your sentence in a preposition. Baseball is using the challenge system now for balls and strikes, the ABS, the automated ball strike system, essentially. And if you're not aware of how it works, essentially, umpires are still calling balls and strikes, but each team has 2 challenges per game. So if a pitch comes in and an umpire calls it one way and somebody thinks it should be the other way, they are allowed to challenge. Now, the only people who can challenge are the pitcher, the catcher, and the hitter, and it has to be immediate. They can't look into the dugout or anything like that. It has to be an immediate challenge. They challenge by tapping the top of their head, looking at the umpire. I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of communication there saying challenging that, it's whatever. And then they go to the ABS system and they look up at the big scoreboard where they project it, and you get a result pretty quickly. The thing to know about the system is that the strike zone that is being used, and I've discussed this before, in this ABS challenge system is not the 100% true strike zone as per the rule book. What it is a 2-dimensional rendering of a 3-dimensional strike zone. It is a plane that is used in the middle of home plate. The width is accurate because the plate is only so wide, and you can, obviously see that that's not going to change from hitter to hitter. But the height is an average, because obviously the height of the strike zone changes from batter to batter. So what they did to find this out was they basically measured every single ball player that they could get, and they came up with an average height and at the top and the bottom of the strike zone, based upon all of these measurements that they took, and they implemented that in determining what was the top and the bottom of the strike zone for the ABS system. Is it perfect? No. Is it an advancement based on what we wanted to see with some of this stuff? Yes. You've heard before, like Dale Scott was talking about it, that there was clearly some sort of opinion that this could be due to sports betting, and I get all of that. So, the rhyme and the reason and how it's happening is just one thing. I mean, it is what it is. We're going to try it. We're going to see what happens in the regular season. It's going to be what it's going to be. The reason that I wanted to comment on it was because I saw reactions from fans that concerned me, and it really speaks to why we have to continue to exist, why our organization has to continue to try and sway the perception of sportsmanship a little bit. I'll give you a great example of what happened. So I'm at a game at George M. Steinbrenner Field. It's a Yankee game, and Aaron Judge is up, and he challenges a pitch that is called a strike. And the home plate umpire, makes the announcement, pitches a strike, batter's challenging. There's a guy behind me who stands up and yells at the umpire, "You're wrong, he's right." Okay. So then we all look up at the big board, and guess what? The pitch was a strike. So the umpire was right and Judge was wrong, the exact opposite of what this dude behind me just yelled at the top of his lungs. And it took every ounce of my being not to turn around and look at him like, how'd that one work out for you, buddy? There is this idea that, we're finally getting revenge on umpires or something like that. And it's just not the case. It's sad, really, when you think about it, that this guy behind me thought that was the appropriate reaction. Why couldn't, if you're going to yell something like that, why don't you at least wait until the thing is up on the board? Because then if the umpire is in fact wrong, now all of a sudden this dude yelling it is like, oh, thank you for overstating the obvious. Okay, at least you have a little bit of credibility there, right, wrong, or indifferent. But I was just like, oh my God, really? So fast forward another day or so, and I'm at a game in Dunedin where the Blue Jays play, and it's like the top of the first inning, and there's this pitch that's right down the middle that the umpire calls a ball, and from where I am, I couldn't exactly see why he called it a ball, but it was immediately challenged and overturned to a strike. It was one of those, it was probably one of those pitches where the reception of the pitch from the catcher made it very difficult to call that a ball or something. It could have been anything, all right? And there's a dude in front of me who's got this look kind of on his face. You can kind of see from the back, what the profile is saying, and then you can also tell from the head movement what he's emoting. It is just this utter disgust for this home plate umpire. And I'm thinking to myself, when replay was introduced, it was introduced to right the obvious wrong. And that's what happened here. So why do we have to kick the umpire for making one mistake like that? We fixed it. And you know what? For the rest of the day, we didn't have a problem like that. So as I'm mulling it over, over which I am mulling it, I get it. Yeah. You start to think a couple of things here. If you start to group the replay system for balls and strikes in a similar manner to what replay was meant to do in all other forms of baseball, you start to see that, again, replay exists to fix the obvious incorrect call. It is meant to right an obvious wrong. Part of opening that Pandora's box is the fact that now you're going to have close plays, close calls that are going to get challenged. And unfortunately, there are going to be times when those calls don't go your way. So, the problem is that the average fan, the average observer, thinks that any sort of challenge is an automatic indictment on the credibility of the official. And even if the call is confirmed, the official still is somehow wrong because my team thought it was supposed to be the other way, and my team can do no wrong. It speaks to this idea that there's no winning with this stuff, and it really takes a village of us to start to say, hey, listen, you got to stop with this. You got to stop with this kind of stuff. You know, I was asked about that kind of stuff recently, especially with the replay with balls and strikes. And I started mentioning all that. And I said, look, you're going to have two types of pitches that are challenged. Okay? You're going to have the obvious misses and you're going to have the close calls. All right? If a pitch that is an obvious miss gets overturned, well, then replay did what it was supposed to do. It fixed an obvious incorrect call. And as an umpire, I want that call to be correct. If it's a personal shot at my own ego from within myself saying, geez, Jack, how did you miss that call? That's one thing. But what I don't need then, if I'm the official, is the ire of all of these other adults, whether they're on the field or in the stands, reminding me that I missed that call. Replay did its job, and that's a good thing. You know, why is it so difficult to think that, geez, maybe, just maybe, someone's having an off day at work? You know, when you go to work each day and someone's having a bad day, do you make sure to let that person know that, you know, oh, you're having a bad day? Well, you suck. No, normally you don't do that. So why are we doing it with officials? We don't do it with players. Player has a bad game. We don't look at that guy all the time and say, man, you really suck. You know, if it's someone on our team, we might try and have a little bit more empathy. Or we might go too far off the deep end and say, yeah, get rid of him. Now, he's had one bad game, so he's worthless. Like, these are the fallacies. These are the stupid things that we face in sports and in life. You know? So I mentioned the obvious misses. Okay, replay did its job. I'm not going to get mad at an official for that. Okay? The close calls, replay was never meant to fix the close calls. We accept that as part of the equation with the desire to fix the obvious misses. We accept the fact that we have situations where bang plays are going to be questioned. And we hope we get it right. It's that simple. I hate to break it to you, even the closest of calls, sometimes we're just not going to get it right. We don't have that ability to be 100% all the time when using technology. And there are a lot of players, and when I say a lot, I mean more players than I think we expected. Even if it's a small number, the fact that there are those who are coming out and saying this at least makes me take notice. There are a lot of baseball players coming out saying essentially something along the lines of, you know, I'm old school. I like the human element of the game. I want the umpire doing their job, etc. And they say, I understand why we have it and all that stuff, but you know, having the human behind the plate calling balls and strikes is the way that I would prefer to do it. And when you start to get a little bit of that from the humans playing the game, all of a sudden you start to take notice and, can't believe that guy's saying this. That's interesting. So my point is that I'm not going to get upset when it comes to the ABS system or really any challenge system. Okay, when it comes to how calls get confirmed, how they stand, or how they get overturned. Because they are meant to fix the obvious wrong, and we accept the fact that the close ones are going to become perhaps even closer, perhaps even more controversial. And don't forget this too, in baseball especially, the way that we challenge these calls is finite. Okay, there is a strategy to the challenge system. So teams are still trying to figure that one out. They're trying to say, all right, we get 2 challenges per game. We got to be right about this. How do we put value on when to challenge and when not to challenge? You know, at least in the other stuff, the non-ABS, the non-ball strike challenges, okay, you have the ability to quickly converse with your replay center in the stadium. You get about 15 seconds or so to look at a replay and make a determination as to whether or not you want to challenge. And there is I'm sure there's the equivalent of some sort of percentage where it's like, okay, you got like a 50% chance of winning this thing. So, communicate that quickly to the manager and make a determination. So there's a strategy to that. And remember also from like the 8th inning on, you can do a crew chief review. So if you exhaust your challenge, you always have that as a backup. With balls and strikes, you don't always have that. So the point that I'm making here is, again, they've implemented this system to fix the obvious incorrect call with additional in-game strategy. So you have to, it's another part of the game that you have to determine. So now, you might not challenge a close call on balls and strikes in the first inning because I might need that later. Maybe a team is saying, I got to save that one for the 7th or 8th inning in a close spot. Those things exist now. And if challenging balls and strikes, especially, is related to sports betting, did we really gain an advantage? Because now, even if an umpire misses a call, there's only a certain percentage chance that the pitcher, the hitter, or the catcher will even challenge it to get it right. So there's a lot of moving parts here. And the biggest thing that I think we can take from it at this time is that replay exists for a particular reason. And so long as we are within those general parameters, maybe the idea should be that we shouldn't get upset. Maybe we shouldn't be going off the deep end over officials because of this, whether they get the call right or wrong, whether replay confirms it or overturns it. It just is what it is. Why can't we just take a step back and be entertained and enjoy the game and the competition for what it is? It speaks more to the fact that we are investing ourselves into this stuff a little too much, especially if we have money on the line. Imagine if we're investing too much into this and it's not money on the line, then it speaks more to the psychology of ourselves of why that's happening. But that's a different topic for a different time. The biggest thing I wanted to just make sure I got on the table today is that we need to do a little bit of an evaluation on what we think of these challenge systems, of the ability to use replay to fix calls in sports. And it starts with us, the fans, and saying maybe our overreactions need to stop. Because if we can start to control what we can control, which is our own reaction, I bet a lot more will fall into place in terms of acting appropriately and promoting good sportsmanship. That's all for today. I really appreciate you joining me. As always, check us out online at osafoundation.org. Email address is podcast@osafoundation.org. Facebook.com/osafoundation. X and Instagram @osafoundation. # how you play the game. We'll talk to everybody in a few short weeks. Until then, treat each other with respect. How You Play the Game is a production of the OSIP Foundation, Incorporated. The producer-engineer of this episode is Sean Ryan. Music by Soundspring Studio. The executive producer of How You Play the Game is Jack Furlong. For more information, visit osipfoundation.org.